welcome to our YouTube channel. So we have been discussing number of theories, and today we are going to talk about the major theories that are associated with eco-criticism. We have already discussed about eco-criticism. Today we are going to talk about the major theories that are associated with it. So Cheryl being one of the most important theorists, we first are going to talk about her. This photo in front of you is of Cheryl. Her full name is Cheryl Gottfelty. She is someone who was the professor in the literature environment in USA. She has written a book co-edited with Harold Fromm. The book's name is The Eco-Criticism Reader. This book is one of the most important book and a critical anthology that helped the green field of literary studies to come forward. She is one of the most prominent writer when it comes to the green studies, the eco-criticism that is there. She is the co-founder and the past president of a very important association called as the Association for the Study of Literature and Environment, which is also called as ASLE. So this is Cheryl. This picture in front of you is of Cheryl, and this book is also very important. That is the Eco-Criticism Reader, written in 1966. She, along with Harold Fromm, are writing this book, right? Then we have Lawrence Buell. So Lawrence Buell, this person in front of you is Lawrence. Lawrence has written a lot of books related to nature as well as literature. So he is another very canonical activist and a writer when it comes to this field of eco-criticism. Lawrence has done a lot of publications about nature and literature. In his last study, Environmental Imagination, Buell actually analyzes the perception of nature from Henry David Thoreau to the contemporary writers. So we have already discussed about how the transcendentalists helped in the perception of eco-criticism and how green studies is something that is seen in UK. Now this is one step further. It is Lawrence who studied the latest trends of how contemporary writers are writing. Not only that, he is also talking about the time before. So he is talking about Henry David Thoreau till the contemporary writers, and he is going to analyze the perception of nature in each and every writer that is there. In this book, The Environmental Imagination. Then, according to Lawrence Buell, the environmentally oriented work should display the following characteristics. So, according to him, whichever work you are reading, if it is environmentally oriented, it should have certain characteristics. What all are the characteristics? The non-human environment is present not merely as a framing device, but as a presence that brings to suggest that human history is implicated in nature and history. Okay, in the natural history. So the non-human environment is always present. You see that whatever be the environment, the other non-human environment that is given to us, that is the nature, it is always present, and it's like a framing device that has its presence in there. And this will suggest how the human history is evolving. So nature and human history will evolve together. The human interest is not understood to be the only legitimate interest. Here you are not going to pay focus only on the human interest, but on the other non-human activities, like the other environmental activities that are there are also important. Human accountability to the environment is a part of the text's ethical framework. And if you look at the text, the ethical framework should include any accountability that any human will hold. So it is humans' accountability to the environment. What is your accountability? How can you protect environment? What are your roles when it comes to environment? Then there should be some sense of environment as a process rather than as a constant or given to in a very least explicit manner in the text. So if there is a text, you are not going to take it for granted that yes, there is a presence of text. Rather, you have to explicitly talk about it, not implicit. Implicit jab hota hai, you take advantage of those things. If it is explicit, you will talk about how environment is an important component in the text. So in some sense, environment will become a process, not a constant, but a process in itself, something that has a value of its own. Then we have another important writer. It is Gerald Gerard. And he is someone who is also associated with FCC Sustainability Professor. So he is the FCC Sustainability Professor at the University of British Columbia, a National Teaching Fellow of the British Higher Education Academy and the founding member of the former chair of Association for the Study of Literature and Environment. So he is the former chairperson of the Association for Study of Literature and Environment in UK and Ireland. So he is the author of eco-criticism as well as numerous other essays that talks about eco-pedagogy. What is eco-pedagogy? How do you study environment? उसकी pedagogy के बारे में इन्होंने detail में बात की है. So he's not only talking about eco-pedagogy but about animal studies. What is the role of animals in the works that we read? How are we positionalizing these creatures? Are we only given value to the humans? Only humans are given value? Are the other creatures not holding any value? So these are the things that these people will question. And environmental criticism. So he is writing, he's the author of eco-criticism as well as a number of essays related to eco-pedagogy, animal studies and environmental criticism are there. Animal studies is the very upcoming field when it comes to PhDs as well. So he has recently edited Teaching Eco-Criticism and Green Cultural Studies and the Oxford Handbook of Eco-Criticism and became the co-editor of the Green Letters Studies in Eco-Criticism. So these are few other works that are associated with Gerard. So with Greg Gerard. Then we have Scott Skolwick. Scott has served as the founding president of the Association for the Study of Literature and Environment, that is ASLE, from 1992 till 1995 and has edited the journal ISLE, that is the Interdisciplinary Studies in Literature and Environment. Okay, so he has been editing the journal, that is ISLE. It stands for it stands for Interdisciplinary Studies in Literature and Environment, and he was also the founding president. सबसे पहले ये president थे when this association came up, that is ASLE, that is Association for Study of Literature and Environment. He is currently writing the fundamentals of eco-criticism and environmental literature and editing a book called as The Cambridge Companion to American Literature and Environment, among other projects. So he's been busy doing other projects, and these two are the important projects that he has undertaken. He's a professor of literature and environment at the university, which is present in USA. When it comes to Scott refers to give this broad description of the field of eco-criticism. What is this broad definition that he has given? Eco-criticism is the study of explicitly environmental texts from any scholarly approach to conversely the scrutiny of ecological implications and natural nature relationships in any text, even texts that seem at once glance oblivious to the non-human world. So what is he saying? He says that eco-criticism is the study of those texts which you think are very oblivious. Oblivious means that they do not talk about the non-human aspects, the non-human world like nature, but no, when you read the text, when you do a deeper reading, then what you will see that there are always environmental factors that will anyway, some way or other are going to influence the human. So it seems that at first glance, there is no role, that the text is oblivious to the non-human world. But you will find gradually that there is always an ecological implication and there is definitely a relationship between human and nature. When you approach it from that way, you will find the loose knots and you can tie them. Then we have Spiril Opperman. So she is the Turkish contributor when it comes to the development of eco-criticism. She has published many research articles related to eco-criticism as well as the postmodern English literature. She is also the editor of the most recently published book, Material Eco-Criticism. So she is writing about postmodernism as well as eco-criticism. Material Eco-Criticism is an important work by her. Then what are the characteristics of eco-criticism? Let us quickly talk about it. Eco-criticism basically, as we all know, deals with the relationship that is there between culture and nature. Eco-critics reject the notion that everything is socially or linguistically constructed. So they say that not everything is related to culture, society, or linguistic. There are innate things that you do not see. The nature that is always helping a person. There is definitely a relationship between culture and nature. Culture is important, but nature is definitely pushing the culture forward. Eco-critics are definitely against the old school of nature. What is it? Eco-criticism is against the old established definitions of nature. They're saying that in a very self-conscious manner, the definition of nature has changed. Therefore, eco-criticism puts forth the idea that man is not the master of nature. It is not the man who is the master of the nature. And nature is not the slave anymore. Nature is not the slave, man is not the master. Ecological literary criticism points out the importance of free reading the major literary texts in order to subvert these anthropocentric view of the world. So according to this anthropocentric view, we see that in the entire world, it is man that is at the center. But when you topsy-turvy these things, if you just turn these things, you will see what the eco-critics are talking about. According to them, man is not the center. It is the nature around which everything is situated. Man is not to be given the highest position. Then there are some of the waves that we need to talk about. The first wave of eco-criticism was seen between 1970 till 1990. Here you see that the eco-criticism's first wave, rooted in the deep ecology, tended to see nature and man and human beings as opposed to one another. So in the first wave, they saw that man versus nature was the concept. That man, the nature and the human beings were opposed to one another. It is held that the proper response of the environmental criticism should be to protect the natural environment from the from you can say from the problems that the human conditions are creating or the human culture is creating. So you can say in the first wave of criticism, in the first wave of eco-criticism, we saw that there are a lot of anthropogenic activities that a human is doing because the culture is increasing. As the human culture is going forward, the man is also using the resources in a reckless manner and environment is suffering. So because of this, in the first wave, the man versus the nature is given to us. Then comes the second wave. The second wave of eco-criticism is from 1990 till 2000, where you equate these two things together. The second wave of eco-criticism, which addressed itself to human concerns as well as to non-human nature, to urban and subhuman environment, as well as to the wilderness settings, and to all types of literary texts, not just the nature writing. It promoted by dialogue with the environmental justice movement. Second wave of literary critics no longer saw that human beings and the nature were opposed to one another, but instead they focus on the ways in which they were interdependent and mutually they were constructing one another. So it is mutual relationship that they have. They are mutually constitutive of one another, which means that there is an interdependence and mutual relationship between man and nature. If you take man out of the picture, nature will suffer, and if you take nature out, the man would suffer. So there is no opposition, but there is the coming together. There is the equation. There is the interdependence seen between these two things. Then comes the third wave that is seen in the 20s. So the third wave of eco-criticism will continue to build in the later, of course, in this era as well. And this was, of course, something that was adding to the second wave. So ये second wave में addition थी, deconstructing the inherited opposition of nature and man, nature or human, in which the former is privileged and the latter is degraded, exploiting the social, economic and physical dimensions of the environmental process. The third wave also examines the environmentality as the key tribute to all the texts rather than the nature writing. So what is one thing that is added? So in the second wave, I told you that they're putting it together, but somehow we know that it is the man who had the more power. It is the man who was given a privileged position, or it can be the nature that is given the privileged position. So rather than any of them getting the privileged position, it is important to talk about the environmentality. It is going to talk about how do we treat environment rather than thinking about anything else. So rather than thinking about the opposition between nature and human, where nature you say is more important. So बीच में ऐसा भी हुआ था that eco critics said that nature is more important. In the second wave, when they were saying that there is a kind of interdependency, there were writers who said that definitely humans are feeding on nature. So nature is by far more important. So what will happen? This wave, this third wave will talk what the second wave people were saying. Further, they will say that the key attribute to any writing is that, one, you will not say which is better. Both are important. Secondly, you need to look at the environmentality. What is the mentality of the people and how can you protect the environment? And of course, rather than talking about the nature writing, rather than only talking about the nature, talk how environment is important to us. Then there are multidisciplinary fields that are attached to eco-criticism. What are these fields? In addition to the third wave eco-critics that claim that eco-criticism is a multidisciplinary research field, there are a number of miscellaneous research topics attached to it. So this is something that is very important. These are the research topics and you can also carry forward your research in these topics. Ecofeminism, which we will be discussing in the further videos. We have eco-Marxism. We have eco-post-colonialism. We have eco-cinema. We have post-humanism and eco-criticism. We have eco-theater, animal studies, and we have eco-pedagogy. So there are a number of fields, number of multidisciplinary options that are coming in front of us. These multidisciplinary research fields are there under eco-criticism. So I hope you understood that there are three phases or three waves, just as feminism has different waves. Similarly, eco-criticism also had different waves. And there are other fields that are coming and blooming from this important field, that is eco-criticism. You also should understand the difference between eco-criticism and green studies. Also, we discussed about the various theorists that have been talking about eco-criticism. Cheryl being the most important one, already asked in the paper. So I hope you liked the video, you understood what was there in the video. If you still have any doubt, you can ask me that in the comment section and I'll surely reply to you. Thank you and have a wonderful day ahead.